Well, good morning, Good morning, everybody. The looks like the hour, as take it from Mr. Ralston, the hour of convening having arrived. Trey Rhodes, would you like to give us an invocation this morning, please, sir?
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the opportunity to be here. And we just ask that you guide us and direct us and keep everyone under our voice safe today, Lord, and our families at home. We just ask that you bless this day, and everything that we do honors you. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. We've got a couple of members coming to their seats. Good morning, everybody. This is our meeting of banking and finance meeting that we're having, and we've got a bill to hear today. But first, Ms. Nola, would you like to approach and tell us your thoughts? And I know there was a letter that was sent out, and I'd like for you to, I'll give you your time if you'd like to go over that, please.
Yes, thank you. Do you mind if I sit there?
Should, but that'll be perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Something interesting I found out this morning is we share the same birth date, and I'm not going to tell you which one is younger. I'll let y'all decide that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving us the opportunity.
Just pull it closer.
Are good?
Yeah, if you'll pull it closer,
Okay,
the
sorry.
mic closer to you, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving us the opportunity. And if it pleases the chair, I have copies of the letters, should some of the committee not have brought it with them, that we
Okay.
can distribute.
Sure, that's fine.
That's fine. I don't know if anyone.
I think we all got that email, but yeah, that'd be great.
Yes. Here you go. Yeah, I think that's it. I'll try to be brief.
Good morning.
Okay.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
ma'am.
And thank you for the opportunity again to address you. I'm Nuala Zaharis. I serve as the Assistant Commissioner of Securities and the Director of the division that oversees securities, charities, and cemeteries. And I've asked our Senior Enforcement Attorney, Christina Hurd, to be up here with me to be able to answer any questions that,
Sure. Glad to
that I
have you here.
Thank you.
Yes, so, I wanted to start by saying that I've been actively involved with securities since 2005. My first experience in securities with government, which put me in direct contact with harmed Georgia investors. My experience is also in industry, which gave me a deeper understanding of how companies form, how they operate, and how they grow their businesses while they're trying to navigate their regulatory obligations and at the same time have a duty to their shareholders. So the Securities Act is a statute that regulates conduct, not merely institutions. It's designed to be investor protection focused. You know, we maintain the markets, and facilitating capital formation is never to the detriment of any investor, including the Georgians that you represent. You know, securities regulators are actually conduct regulators. Banking regulation is designed to ensure that banking institutions have the financial strength to survive economic shocks to meet its obligations. You don't want people to run to the banks to get their money if something catastrophic happens. So banking regulators are more prudential. Although both have very important missions and they do appear superficially similar, both serve different purposes with fundamentally distinct features. But that doesn't mean that they can't work together. They can work together. The key is, how do they work together? So HB 934 legislation is legislation that would take the oversight of securities market and the stewardship of investor protection away from the Secretary of State and move it to banking and finance. That is one option, to make the conduct regulator a subordinate of the prudential regulator. Another option would be to coordinate rather than subordinate. And as I address in the letter that I sent to you, a copy of which now you have in front of you, making such a move should be well thought out, thoroughly researched, and treated with the seriousness such a move deserves. Moving an agency to a new parent entity is a complex process. As I also stated in my letter, it's not as simple as moving it. You have to consider the legal and operational challenges as well as the potential adverse effects on the taxpayers. A move creates operational and technological disruptions. It could lead to the loss of institutional knowledge. Taxpayer funding will be needed because transitioning often results in duplicative expenses and destroys existing economies of scale. On the other hand, improving coordination would keep the existing model and put measures in place to strengthen the communication and collaboration between both agencies. Improving collaboration is a cost-effective approach to the taxpayer. It is less disruptive approach because it involves the agencies harmonizing procedures, establishing strategic communication protocols, and executing interagency agreements. That would not involve moving physical assets, onboarding staff, migrating sensitive data, and procuring systems that are unique to each, all of which will at some point require funding. As my letter states, the fiscal note for this move is critical. It provides an objective, written estimate of the financial, operational, and budgetary impact of the move. Basically, it's the price tag that helped you as legislators understand the costs and the savings, or even the revenue losses, so that the move does not have a negative impact on the overall state budget. That is why I call in my letter for a study committee. Conducting a study prior to the consolidation, to the consideration of adopting this legislation, and conducting that study with a group of stakeholders of both agencies is a fundamental component in considering merging these agencies. It would study the high complexity of regulations and operations of each, identify any risks that could happen with a migration or moving it, and it would coordinate a cost-benefit analysis to determine whether it is more cost-effective to provide the division with additional resources, or is it more cost-effective to put the divisions together. I thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's see, from the committee, I have 25.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions. I read through your letter the other day, and I reread through it just now. And I see that it says the Secretary of State's office works tirelessly to protect investors every day. And given that the SEC complaint alleges First Liberty sold unregistered securities for over a decade, how do we reconcile that tireless protection with all the investor harm, $140 million of investor harm that we know of, maybe more? How do I reconcile that?
So that's an excellent question, actually, and that's what we look at every day. There are many ways in which you can reconcile that, and it involves not just one super agency doing all the work. it requires a collaborative approach, and which is what we have. We work with our other regulatory partners like the SEC, the Department of Justice. I can go on and on and on of the agencies that we work with to have dialogues about, we're seeing this out there, you need to take a look because it looks like it's this way. So collaboration is one way. Another way is also through education. One of the most effective ways is to stop is to help stop fraud, is to make the public aware, the consumer aware that this is out there, and talk to them about things that they should do, when considering making an investment. These are the things you need to look at. These are the types of questions you need to ask. And if you're still not sure, these are the agencies that you need to have. Now, in this particular matter, and in other matters, like I said, we work very in tandem with the SEC. And in this particular case, the SEC notified us on July 1st that it was planning to, take action. And because we have our monthly calls with the SEC enforcement, we, at that point, spoke together about who's going to do what in this matter.
Well, why were you guys a party to the initial action of the SEC then? If there's such a great coordination with the SEC and what you guys are doing, wouldn't you be a party to the SEC action since you're the regulator on the state level?
So they have their federal laws, and they need to do, they follow the federal act, but we have state laws what allows us to do things too. So while they're doing their, as what we told them, that yes, you may go ahead and do this, but we are planning to open a state, investigation. Because yes, they will have their, action and have their findings and do at the end what they need to do on the federal level. But in addition to bad actors, maybe violating the federal act, they also violate the Georgia, the state act, right? So we have the ability to do our own enforcement.
But they violated it. They're accused of violating it for 11 years. And so, were there any enforcement actions done to them prior to the federal coming to you and saying that there's potentially a problem here?
So we did not receive any complaints about that. And if you're asking, I think your question may be asking is how do we catch a Ponzi scheme or something like that before it happens?
I mean, they advertised on radio. I mean, it
Right.
wasn't a hidden thing whether it was a Ponzi scheme or not.
Right.
I'm not asking how do you catch them. I'm saying why was this not caught?
So we did not receive a complaint or a referral about it. In the cases where we receive complaints, our protocol is to immediately open up an investigation and look into it. We get complaints from the public, we get complaints from members of the legislature, we get referrals all the time from the different regulatory agencies, our partners. In this case, with First Liberty, the only complaint that we received, and the only that we found, was from the SEC on July 1. And I could have my attorney speak more legally on that, if that would help.
Well, I don't think that's...
I got one more.
Okay, one more question, because we have, this thing's lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, oh God.
And then I got to present, so...
Okay.
Is there something, if this was under a different regulatory way, if it was under Departments of Banks and Finance, what would be lost with what you can do versus what they could do in this situation?
So, would you like to answer that?
Yes.
That's a legal.
And,
Because I think most states have it this way under banks and banking, a plurality.
21.
I'm aware of a document that you received that shows where the states have it, and I would say that I think maybe 21 states might have it together, where 29 states do not have it together. And it's great to have a list, but that's a list. And so in looking at that list, that provides you, yes, data on where, how securities and works with other types of regulatory agencies. But I would think that taking a deeper look into how they are there in the 21 states. For example, you need to look at their regulatory framework. You know, some states, they're together where they're equal and they report to a super regulator, a bigger regulator that has many financial institution areas reporting to it. And other states, they have it where the top regulator is the Department of Banking, because that's the name of the organization, and the securities and other areas report up to that. So I would look at that type of structure. That's why I think a study committee could look at that information. They could take that great list. It's a great list. And it could provide you with, oh, this is how they do it. But how do they do it? And how does it work in those states? And maybe we should do it like, you know, this state does it, or maybe we should do it like that state does it. But the committee should also look, and looking at all the other states, that so many states do it that way, they should also look at the 29 other states who don't do it that way and ask them, why did you choose not to go this route and you went the other route? And that way you have a level playing field or bigger vantage point of deciding which is the best way, and if you're going to put it together with banking and finance, under what structure is the best way.
But I think only 5 had it under Secretary of State today. I think only 5 states have it.
And they're 10 with Georgia the way we do it now. So they're not all 29 are doing it the same way.
No, I'm not saying they're
Right.
doing it
I just want to
different
make
ways.
that,
Yeah,
yes,
I
yes,
agree
ma'am, I just
with-
wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that.
I agree with that.
I had to
Right,
talk.
Yeah.
22?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the letter, because it did beg some questions. But since you bring up in your letter this fraud that happened from First Liberty, my question is quite simply, because I'm not an expert in securities law, but I know there's some safe harbors, but we're all in agreement that these securities should have been registered, correct?
Yes, they conducted unregistered activity.
And so they never registered with you?
They did not register with the
Secretary
of
of
Georgia. They did not register with the SEC because it requires SEC registration as well.
And my question is, given the fact that they advertise all over the media incessantly, did it never beg the question that these people are selling securities and, oh, by the way, we look in our files and they never register with the Secretary of State? When did you first go investigate them?
So we first investigated them again when the SEC raised it to our attention on July 1, which we immediately opened up an investigation on that date and got information out. And by July 3rd, we received 22 complaints. And by since then, we've received 150 complaints. But Christina, could you?
That's
Yeah.
excuse me now, because I'm directing my question to you. That's after there's a run on the bank. You used the illustration of safety in the banking department. That's after the horse is out of the barn door. Did it never occur? Y'all have an investigative division. I know for a fact that the Department of Banking and Finance, they will go investigate somebody that appears to be acting like a bank and shut them down, cease and desist orders. Did it never occur to y'all to go check and see whether or not these people were conducting legal activities and why they did not register? That's my question.
Okay.
You had an investigative arm. Why did they not investigate before the Ponzi scheme fell apart?
So you mentioned some of the advertisements. We've become aware of those throughout our investigation. Nobody on our team saw those advertisements before the SEC informed us. So that's
They spent
That's-
millions of dollars
Right.
advertising.
So it's, but they were not nobody on our team was engaged, saw those advertisements. When we do see advertisements or we do hear things on the news, we'll text each other at night, WSB link, whatever it is. But I can assure you that we never saw an advertisement before the SEC informed us.
I'm incredulous. Pardon me, but I'm just stunned that y'all were not aware of this advertisement for this investment quote opportunity. But that I rest my.
Thank you. Okay, we've got, let's see, I'm trying to keep these in order. Number 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a few questions. I know I only probably can get about 2 in, but Do you know whether or not there was any other agency that was aware of this investigation or this scheme?
So it is my understanding that another agency was aware that, received a complaint and was aware that something might be amiss, but we did not receive a referral. Had we received a referral from any agency that got this, we would have immediately opened up an investigation.
Was that agency Banking and Finance?
It is my understanding from what I've read outside in the media that that was it.
Okay, just one other question. Can you tell us what the budget is for securities and commodities for the Secretary of State?
So the division does not just do banking and securities and commodities. We also oversee charities and cemeteries. And so for all 4 areas, our budget that is allocated from the legislature or from, is $1.2 million.
Okay, one final, and then were the 2 agencies talking then, if they received it and they had that complaint with Banking and Finance, were they in communication with the other agency? Or do you guys communicate when something like that occurs?
So our approach, and I'm big on, collaborating. So as soon as we get a complaint, we try to find, if it's not us, we try to find where it is. And there have been times that we have received some complaints that seem to be, a bank. It may not be a bank, but it appears to be that bank, and I've reached out to, banking. There have been times that I've received complaints that, we don't really know what they are. They're not securities, they're not charities, they're not cemeteries, and we work with the AG's office. So we do have a habit of, we do constantly talk to our other agencies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this specific bill, though, talks about securities and commodities. We're not talking about the grave, the cemeteries, or any of that
yes,
purview. We're just talking about Department of Banking and Finance
Right.
overseeing this part. I just want to make that clear. Okay, number 24.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate you guys being here this morning. I just had one question, and it came up with the charities and the cemeteries, but I did read the letter a couple times that you sent, but in the letter you talk about the interwoven, the division having several different functions, but you did talk about the charities, the cemeteries, and the securities. What percentage of time is actually spent on security enforcement versus those other agencies, would you say?
Wow, well, because we have a small team, we, everybody, the registration analysts, do not just securities, but they also do all 3. And the enforcement, team does all 3 matters. So in the percentage of time, I think the senior attorney can tell you more.
Yeah, I would say securities is the bulk of it, probably somewhere between 65 and 70%, and I'm just spitballing here. Cemeteries is the other very large part of it, probably a solid 20%. And then the smaller portion, maybe 10%, is charities,
Okay.
at least on the enforcement side.
Okay. One other question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, one more.
I think you mentioned in the letter that the system, something like could not be picked up and moved. What, could you
Yes,
talk about
the platform that we use to do all 3, for our filings, so that we can give them licenses, and also where we record our enforcement cases, because we put them on a platform with various statistics. Those are, they belong to the Secretary of State, because other divisions within the Secretary of State's office use that. So I'm not sure how that would move
Okay.
over. Yeah.
Thank you. 15.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here this morning. My question is, how do most regulatory agencies get involved in something? Is it because somebody complains, or what do you have that's preemptive? I don't know of any regulatory agencies that are preemptive, but they do respond to complaints. Am I missing something, or what?
So Most of our matters come in two ways, predominantly through complaints, and trust me, complaints come in on a daily basis. Also, we have our industry partners are out there, and if they see something, they will notify us and let us know that something is out there and raise it to our attention. And finally, other regulatory agents, we are always getting referrals. Just yesterday, I received 5 referrals from the Attorney General's office that we've opened up to look into. But that's the typical thing.
Is there anything about your current authority that you are missing that the banks and banking, that banking has that you don't have?
I can't speak to that or answer that because I don't know exactly the authority that banks and banking has. I'm not privy to that information. But if if I was able to have a conversation and we could collaborate, I could answer that better.
Thank you.
Well, I think there'll be plenty of time for collaboration. Number 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if mine is just a question or a comment, but I hear my colleagues on the other side making suggestions about who's wrong and who's what. But, crooks don't advertise. I just want everybody to know that. Crooks don't advertise. And just like we get up and come to work, they get up and go to work to try to do something illegal. And so if somebody doesn't complain, then they have no reason to check and verify anything. I don't care how much money it was, if it was 100 million, 500 million. Let's see, Bernie Madoff, he was right there with securities. He still stole money, and then nobody complained because nobody missed anything. Everybody was getting paid. And so we can pick and choose, what we want to do, but to move a whole agency under one specific thing out of all these years, one thing, is something deeper going on here.
We're just talking about a section.
Me too.
Securities and commodities. We're not talking about a whole agency.
Same thing.
22 other states do it this way.
Let me see your paper.
Well, 21, plus we would be 22.
Yeah, three do it different, four do it different, 10 do it different, and 5 do it different.
Well, Mr. Douglas, what we're doing now isn't working.
Off of one incident,
$150 million?
I don't care if it was 500 million.
Well, I think 300 Georgians would.
Well, that depends on the Georgians that lost the money.
Touche. Okay. Thank you for your point. Okay, let's see. Number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ma'am?
Why y'all didn't tell us about it so we could have best too?
Number 9? I didn't.
Thank you for being here this morning. In your letter, you mentioned that all the activities since January would be at risk of nullification. What does that statement rest on?
Christina?
Please say that. I didn't hear it either.
In the letter that we received,
Yes,
it
ma'am.
says that all activities since January would be at risk of nullification. I understand what nullification is, but why or how did you come to that determination?
In the language of the bill, on line 37, it states that all orders of the Secretary of State that are in effect on December 31, 2025, or are set to go into effect on or after January 1st, 2026, are transferred. And then that's where the date comes from, that January 1st date, but there's other language specifically about nullification.
1 second, can you read the LC number?
I'm going to present
Yes.
that. I'm going to present that bill in a few minutes. So if you want to hold off on that question.
Yeah, yes, that's fine.
Yeah,
LC
yeah.
02.
Let's see. I think 29 has been holding.
Oh, thank you. I just got a couple of questions. So, this First Liberty, I guess they have 2 arms. One of them was sitting under bank and finance, which is the banking portion of it, and then their alleged stock would be under you. Is that correct?
I believe, from what I understand, I read out in the public, is that they were not, maybe they were not part of banking and finance.
My understanding is the buildings and loan organizations were carved out of the banking laws in, I think, 2016. And that is the loophole which allowed First Liberty Building and Loan to operate without any oversight from banking in the loan capacity. And with the securities angle, we were not aware, like I mentioned earlier, we did not see any advertisements. None were brought to our attention. No complaint was filed until people stopped getting their money. Because I've spoken to 100 investors myself, and what happens in a Ponzi scheme is they're receiving their interest month checks every single month, like clockwork. I asked them, any red flags? Yeah, I had red flags for sure. But every time I asked whoever at the company a question, they were able to give me a kind of satisfactory answer, and I was receiving my checks every month like clockwork. If there was an issue with me getting my check, they would fix it right away. So people, crooks are very good at pulling the wool over folks' eyes, and even the most smart person in the room is susceptible to becoming a victim of fraud because of how smart these people are.
Sure. And so since they wasn't registered, y'all didn't do like an annual audit like you would on somebody that's registered, correct?
That's correct, because we have, our act allows us to go in and do examinations of registered firms. We have that authority. The way that we would go into an unregistered firm is we would have to open up an enforcement investigation and go in through our investigative powers.
And that could only be done through a complaint that you received, correct?
It would be through a complaint, and as Christina alluded, schemes like this are set up to create an illusion, and they're schemes that pay. So
Sure.
At the beginning, people are getting their money, and everything is looking legitimate, and even the employees that work for these companies think that everything is okay.
Okay,
It's when the money runs out.
So I know two banks, independent banks, that called y'all and inquired about them because they were calling them about some participation loans and stuff like that, and called, and I know they didn't file an actual complaint, but I do know that they called and asked y'all last year and the year before if this was, if they were operating or something other, and somebody was supposed to get back with them to figure it out, or they'd never heard of it, they wasn't registered, something along that line, because one of the presidents of the bank told me that he knew all before they even fell, and he said he had called the state. Now, he could have called banking side, he could have called security side, but I'm just saying, I think there was knowledge out there that they existed, that they were selling stocks, but what you're saying is you can't do anything until you have someone actually tell you to check into it, or I'll call and complain about something.
What I'm saying is, once we get awareness that something is out there, we immediately act. And if the two banks are telling you that they called someone at the state, and maybe they think they have suggested they called us, if you could provide me with that information, sure. I'll go back and check with my team to see, did we receive that call?
Thank you. Okay, a couple more questions, and I'm going to present our bill. 23.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. I'm not sure who the commissioner is, for starters. Who is the commissioner of securities?
By law, under the Georgia Securities Act, the commissioner is the Secretary of State, and he can appoint an assistant commissioner at the approval of the governor. The governor has a final say on that.
Okay. So first of all, just a statement, I think I might be the only person in the General Assembly who's a founder and CEO of his own bank. And we ran one of the cleanest banks in the entire country, and that was predicated upon being able to identify who you're doing business with, and sort of getting a sense for your customer and knowing who the rascals are, identifying the bad actors preemptively. And I think we've met probably on 2 or 3 occasions, yes, at least starting back, I think, September the 5th.
Yes, sir.
And from the personal experience, I've dealt with the Department of Banking and Finance. I know what it means to have them come into our bank, and in anticipation of that, making sure that we're running a very clean shop. Right. So I have tremendous regard for the Department of Banking and Finance, but I also have great appreciation for the good work that y'all have done at the Secretary of State's office in many ways. The SPEAR Act was a good bill. Financial education for seniors, I've seen y'all do things like that that are quite good. So I don't think we're I'm not trying to say who's responsible, why did we miss this? But since we started meeting in September, I still don't. I've encouraged meetings with the Secretary of State's office and other organizations, including AG's office, et cetera, and just haven't had any results. Sort of seeing that all come together. And I'm thinking in anticipation of these things, because we just had a $340 million Ponzi scheme, I think, a conviction in the last 2 weeks or something.
Yes,
So
sir.
clearly these things are happening. They're going to happen more. And I don't really see a system or a plan in place to preemptively identify these things and eliminate these bad actors before they can get too far gone. The nature of the job at Secretary of State, it's a broad job with a lot of responsibilities. And we have a shrinking number of banks in Georgia, and we have really smart people at the Department of Banking and Finance who are really capable at this. I wonder, can y'all not see the obvious logic of taking an organization with really talented people with a smaller number of banks to regulate and just see the logic of moving that over? Because to me, it's very obvious.
So I would say again that I'm more data-driven. I like to look at everything through a study and getting all the information, in front of me. That's why I suggested a study committee, and I do not doubt that banking and finance has very outstanding people, but the Secretary of State has a very outstanding team too. We have over combined 45 years of experience. The team sits on some very important NASA committees. It collaborates with other states. It leads some multi-jurisdictional enforcement actions. Yes, we are a good team too. We are knowledgeable too, and I'm concerned that a move would take the historical knowledge that, or the institutional knowledge that, I guess the associations and that they've established, and the trust that they've established with other regulatory agencies and with even the investors, and that would get lost, in any kind of transition.
We respectfully disagree with that, and I'm going to go over my bill in just 1 minute, but thank you for your presentation. I have one more question, and then I'm going to present, and if we have any other time. Number 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about people here. If the people move from one person to another, nothing changes in that institutional knowledge. So if just people move from one department to another, as has been the case historically in this General Assembly, responsibilities have changed, but people move over, you're not losing any institutional knowledge. But I want to go back to your attorney's comment about the 2016 change, and I carried that housekeeping bill 10 years ago. We've been since I've been in this General Assembly, the Department of Banking and Finance has been modernizing, streamlining, and cleaning up the code that regulates not just banks, not just deposit and credit unions, which are depository institutions, but money transmitters, our mortgage lenders, our Georgia Installment Lenders Association, which is another example of basically a regulatory entity that moved from one department to the Georgia Department of Banking and Finance seamlessly and efficiently, and it's been a good return for the Georgia taxpayer. That being said, this nomenclature that was cleaned up of buildings and loans in 2016 is the same time we took out the use of telegraphs and other archaic terms. Buildings and loans have not been depository institutions in this state for over 75 years, nor was there any allegations that First Liberty was accepting deposits, acting like a bank. So let's don't throw out a veiled allegation that the Department of Banking and Finance did something wrong in this case, or it should have been reported to them. They had no regulatory responsibility or oversight of somebody using a trade name that was not a regulated entity.
Yes.
That being said, the responsibility from whomever's overseeing our securities protection in the state of Georgia is about those people that are selling unregistered securities. I will go back to the fact that this has been advertised heavily for years, that you can invest, and somebody at some level in state government should have gone in and said, are you registered? That is where the ball got dropped, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And thank you all for your presentation. And if it pleases the group, I'm going to present my bill, and hopefully we can get this thing out. And so I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to present House Bill 934. LC number is 620362S. And we have discussed this bill in bits and pieces, and I'm going to hit the highlights, and hopefully if you have any questions, we can get those resolved for you. But this bill simply is going to transfer the regulations and securities and commodities from the Secretary of State's office to the Department of Banking and Finance to provide for an advisory board and to provide for conformity, to provide for an effective date, and to repeal any conflicting laws. The powers or the functions and duties of the Secretary of State as they exist on June 30, 2026 with regard to securities regulations pursuant to Chapter 5 and commodities regulation pursuant to Chapter 5A of Title 10 are transferred to the department. When I say department, I'm talking banking and finance, effective July 1, 2026. On and after July 1 of 2026, the department shall regulate securities and commodities in Georgia and may coordinate with the Secretary of State for access to and maintenance of records related and commodities regulation for the department to fulfill its duties. On and after July 1, 2026, this is important, any ongoing securities and commodities in investigations with the Office of Secretary of State shall immediately transfer to the department. The Commissioner of the Banking and Department shall appoint an advisory board consisting of up to 12 members. Of such, at least one shall have securities regulation. The remaining members shall have qualifications as the Commissioner may determine. All persons employed by the Secretary of State in capacities which relate to the functions transferred to the department pursuant to this subsection on June 30, 2026, shall, on July 1, 2026, become employees of the department in similar capacities as determined by the Commissioner. And when I say Commissioner, again, I mean the Commissioner of Banking and Finance. The administration of this chapter shall be vested in and who is designated as the Commissioner of Securities. Now that is the bill. We have discussed it. In a nutshell, we have asked questions. 22 other states, if we go this way, would be doing it the same way. Obviously, we have failed. I know some people, it might even be more than 300 because some people might have been embarrassed to come forward and say, hey, I was one of the ones that was duped. They could be saying that. And also, I think it is imperative that we have this up under a department versus having it under a constitutional officer who may or may not receive any contributions. I just think it makes common sense, and I think that's the way we need to go. Do I have any more issues or questions? All right, I'm going to go to my friend number 18.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one thing about the bill that I've been looking at, and I did a little research on. Let me just state this for the record. I have worked with the new Commissioner of Banks and Banking over the years, and he is incredible. Institutional knowledge he has. By far, he's the smartest person in this room today.
Even smarter than Mr. Ridley?
He might have Ridley beat. He might, a little bit. About the ins and outs about banking and finance. But the suggestion that we heard earlier of a study committee to make sure we get it right. Something needs to happen. I'm not saying nothing needs to happen. Something needs to happen. But I think if we take the time to make the appropriate move, if we're going to make the move, or vet and see what works best for our state. It just doesn't fly off the hinges because one thing happened. I know millions of dollars were gone, but you know, if you got in early, you got paid. You got in late, you didn't. It's like any other scheme you do. But I think we need a one-off if we're going to do something like this because of the touchiness, and the Secretary of State's office is elected by the people, and the commissioner is appointed, and then he's going to appoint 12 people. So whoever's in power at the time can hire all their buddies to fill this whole group. And you know, if you want to do it now, that's fine because things are changing. So if you guys want to go down this rabbit hole and send all your stuff and change the way things operate, because tomorrow is going to be a different day. And we have to be back in here for you guys to try to change it back. So let's make the right decision first. Let's take the time to study this and make the appropriate move. That's my suggestion.
Well, thank you for your suggestion. Number 21.
Thank you, Chairman. Just, I want to ask kind of a question, and you can, for the folks that presented, it can just be a yes or no from where you're sitting. I know that in the banking world, to what my friend and colleague, Mr. Ridley, indicated about some bankers having questions, I know that we are required to issue suspicious activity reports. I've been a banker for 28 years. And I'm certain that with an entity like this, that there must have been some suspicious activity reports filed over this long period of time based on the dollar volume and the type of business they were conducting. Does your agency ever receive any contacts from prudential regulators like the FDIC or the OCC as it relates to SARS to alert you, since apparently nobody in your agency listens to many radio stations on their commute to work that was having multiple advertisements, and it wasn't immediately figured out by anybody on the staff? Were there other places that were throwing up some yellow flags from those two other regulatory agencies? Yes or no? Or
You can speak right there.
We do collaborate with other agencies, and we receive complaints from the CFTC, the Department of Justice, the FTC, the SEC. I can name them all.
what about the FDIC or the OCC?
No, have we received? No. I know that, but which did they send us? The FDIC. Every once in a while, the FDIC
Okay.
sends it to the thing. Yes.
Okay, I'm curious if your team has looked to see if you could research if the FDIC had made any inquiries during the last 10 years regarding that entity.
Yeah, we can
because
do that
that should have been one of the ways to alert you earlier on. And I want to make this point. I think the chairman made a great point that I think many have ignored, and I want to restate it. I think that the states that are looking at ensuring that depositors as well as investors are protected, the oversight, to me, it just makes common sense for there to be the director of the banking and finance is not a political figure. Currently in Georgia law, the Secretary of State is a political figure. They can receive campaign contributions. I think one of the biggest benefits of this legislation is to transfer the oversight responsibility to someone who will never receive a campaign contribution, period. That was a very salient point. And that's critical for us to ensure that we make the right steps. This has been studied by many members of this committee at the direction of this chairman, and I don't think this is something that we need to study much more. The Department of Banking and Finance can handle this, and at the appropriate time, Chairman. Thank you.
I believe now is the appropriate time. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion or any amendments to the bill? If not,
More discussion.
point of discussion, go ahead.
Which one, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I noticed that we don't have a physical note with this, and there are going to be some administrative costs to it. We've already heard her talk about the platform cannot be used. So we're talking about a component of IT and data to make sure that that is compatible when it goes from Secretary of State and goes over to banking and finance. So and I didn't see anything in the budget.
Right. That has been discussed, and I think we can discuss that more with the appropriations chairman, and we can make sure that we have what's in there that needs to protect Georgians, because that's what we're concerned about, protecting all Georgians.
Physical note.
That'd be the 27th.
That'd be up under the 27 budget. So we have a motion, we have a second. What is that? What number are you?
Thank you. Thank
Glad
you
you could join us.
Yeah, glad to. I tell you, the scheduling is such that there's 3 other committee meetings going on.
You can't be in 3 places at once.
You just 2, just 2. 3 stretches.
Go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
But in any event, Mr. Chair, from a practical standpoint, let me just hear how you will square. You're simply moving some officials to another department that will have their oversight. For instance, an example I've been given is maybe like moving carpenters under the.
We're talking about securities and commodities. Right. That's all. 21 other states are doing it just like this, and I have confidence in our chair of Department of Banking that they have the skills that they can undertake this, and that we will be in good shape and good order. Mm-hmm. And much less we will have the legislature helping, and we can look over. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything we need to add to it this time next year, we certainly can.
I see. All right, well, help me, then that's good. And help me convince me that the mere fact of making them not report to an elected official would be the best way to go. If that be the case, man, there's so many departments I can tell you we would.
Well, we can take those up later, but they have nothing to do with banking and finance.
Right.
But thank you for your comments.
All right. Mr. Chairman,
we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay. Bill passes. Thank you. What's that?